What price does a comedian put on their own credibility? Well, the Riyadh Comedy Festival, currently taking place in Saudi Arabia, might be giving us the answer. Billed as the world's largest comedy festival, it was announced by Turk Al-Sheikh, chairman of the Saudi General Entertainment Authority, as part of a push to position Riyadh as a global entertainment hub. But critics argue the event is really about whitewashing Saudi Arabia's poor human rights record, including its repression of free speech and ongoing abuses. While the participation of some apolitical comedians didn't raise too many eyebrows, the appearance of figures like Bill Burr, long admired for his willingness to speak truth to power, shocked fans and may have done lasting damage to his reputation. On today's episode, John and I discuss the festival, which features some of our favourite, or maybe now former favourite comedians, and ask, is this an important step towards Saudi Arabia's cultural modernization, or is it just a heavy dose of copium from performers who built careers on calling out hypocrisy only to reveal themselves as total sellouts with an insatiable appetite for cash? John Maloney, have you been following the the Riyadh Comedy Festival? And are you excited to see Australian-Irish comedian Jim Owen on the lineup?
I can't wait to see Jim Owen and the Umbilical Brothers.
That was a Batuta Advocate, wasn't it? They had an Umbilical Brothers bit. So good.
Steady Eddie, I think, is there.
Yes.
So
Greg Fleet.
Greg Fleet. I'm actually here in Riyadh because the price of tickets, which is as low as about 100 Riyal, struck me as well worth the plane ticket. If you go see enough shows at that price, then you are saving money. Because even though the acts got paid a lot, the tickets are relatively cheap, which makes me think it's not about generating profit. It's probably about something else.
And we are going to dive right into that. I've been wanting to talk about this for ages because this has been on my radar for a few months. I think I saw it in the background and I didn't pay much attention to it. And then what happened for me is I subscribed to and am, or potentially was, a big fan of American comedian Tim Dillon, who's become huge over the last few years. And I was watching Tim Dillon's YouTube channel, as I do every week. I would tune into all of his episodes. And he started his program and he said, we're going to Riyadh. I'm going to the Riyadh Comedy Festival. I thought genuinely that it was a Tim Dillon bit, and I think this speaks to why this is
the kind of thing he would say as a joke.
This is exactly the kind of thing that he would say as a joke, because his whole thing is, he sort of does this speaking truth to power by, he kind of takes the position of the very thing that he's criticizing. He pretends that that's a thing that he himself is participating in, and that's where the comedy comes from. So him getting up there and saying, I'm going to Riyadh, we're going over there, we're taking the bag, I'm getting the money. I was like, oh, this is so funny. He's about to go in on all the comedians that are doing this, and bravo, this is going to be so funny. And then as the bit went on, I was like, wait, is he really doing it? Because he was saying, and then I jump over to the official website, and sure enough, he was really doing it. And then I just started thinking, I think this is about to become a bit of a bigger story than it has so far. And perhaps we can even start the episode as I've mentioned it. Perhaps as a bit of a kickoff, or maybe is that? Do you think that's it? Maybe to give people a bit more context, John. Maybe before I show the Tim Dillon clip, maybe you can just say from your perspective what you were seeing with the Riyadh Comedy Festival and what some of the problems and the blowback seemed to be.
Yeah, well, for those who don't know, Saudi Arabia is a country in the Middle East, and it's some of you might be asking, is it really that bad? I watched Aladdin when I was a kid, and it seemed like a magical place of genies and magic carpets and temples and sheiks and so on. And that's probably part of it. But another part of it is for example, the fact that it executes almost one person every day, that a lot of those executions are beheadings, some of them are public, some of them are for things like adultery, which can include, allowing oneself to be raped. I think women are unable to go out alone in public, but they are allowed to drive. That's right. became law in 2018, which was a momentous thing for me because I had a moratorium on offering my services to anywhere where women couldn't drive. But I think that's once that was taken care of, I'd be happy to perform there if asked. And and what else? They obviously killed Jamal Khashoggi, who's a journalist who was there and then lied about it. They had a role in orchestrating, or at least Saudi Arabians had a role in orchestrating 9/11, and they've kind of harbored various extremists who have been responsible for violence around the world, things like that. So yeah, they're not top shelf, and I think Human Rights Watch and Amnesty have been annoyed already in the past with their kind of consistent efforts to whitewash their reputation in recent years. I think they've hosted a golf tournament. They've hosted
Live Golf is
Live Golf. They've done WWE's done some stuff over there.
UFC.
That's right. UFC's done some stuff.
The boxing.
Yeah.
Sports entertainment.
And so this is a kind of continuation of that strategy to promote Saudi Arabia. Perhaps they've got obviously their main source of income is fossil fuels, and so they're concerned, I guess, that when that wave eventually subsides, they might need to make a reputation for themselves as the world's premier comedy festival destination. So this festival is taking place. In fact, it's ongoing as we speak. And I understand there's a couple of different venues where it's taking place. One small, one large, and the lineup is incredible. Everyone from our man Tim Dillon to man, I thought you were lying about Jim Owen, but he's
no man.
I just was looking at the list. I'm like, what? Jim Owen? Holy moly! Louis C.K., Dave Chappelle, Jimmy Carr. You mentioned Bill Burr, Hannibal Buress, who I'm a fan of.
You've got a Hannibal Buress T-shirt.
I do, yeah. Andrew Schultz, Tom Segura, Bobby Lee, all those guys. Sebastian Maniscalco. Surprisingly, not Jerry Seinfeld, possibly because of his defense of Israel, which wouldn't be well received in Saudi Arabia. Kevin Hart. I mean,
of course.
No, Kevin would probably do it,
aka the Bag Man.
The Bag Man. Kevin's the kind of comedy equivalent of sorry, his name's just gone out of my head. Snoop Dogg.
Yes.
In that, who just performed at the AFL halftime show, grand final, Australian Football League. But like Snoop Dogg, Kevin, who I also saw in the instructional video on Qatar Airways flight recently. He'll just do whatever it takes to keep himself in the green. And so I've been. I think you probably. I mean, you've been kind of sending me various clips and things, and so I've got a bit more of a sense of which we'll go through, I guess, of what the kind of array of different attempts to explain it have been, what some of the criticisms have been, and so on. But it's fascinating, and I think it combines two things we love: comedy and hypocrisy.
It's true. One of the key themes of the show is hypocrisy, and of course,
particularly celebrity hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy. There's even bits of shame. Although perhaps what is particularly interesting about this is there's a lack of shame, which we love. We love shame as much as we love a lack of shame on the show.
Shame and its absence is one of the themes of the show.
So the reports are that the comedians were getting anywhere from between, I think low end was 300,000 USD. And the rumor is that the top performers got 1.6. So you're talking about Bill Burr and Dave Chappelle, who are already wildly wealthy and famous.
Yeah.
And they were likely getting a 1.6 bag each for a little bit of a flyover, and you get put up in a nice hotel. You do your, I don't know, 45 minutes. I don't know how long it is, and then you trot off, and
some of them were just doing like single gigs, you know. So it's like you do one show, and you get kind of $1.5 million, or some of them are getting 375,000 ish US. So a decent bag for. If you break that down in terms of dollars per minute, it's a pretty good income.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought what we could do is we could start by showing Tim. I find Tim. We can rest on Tim Dillon for a little bit, because I find I don't think there's been enough pointed criticism of Tim Dillon, and I have been particularly personally disappointed by him. And so what I want to do is I want to play this bit. A lot of our audience won't have heard of Tim Dillon, but he is I would describe his style as extremely dry and very in my kind of pocket. It's this very he's not laughing at his own jokes. The kind of character that he plays, he kind of inhabits. He'll like I was saying in the intro, he will sort of take the position that he doesn't really hold and really strongly push it, and it's very funny, because in that he reveals just how ridiculous or amoral whatever he's doing is. Yeah. So which is why it was so strange to me when he was using that device, that same device, to announce that he was doing the gig. And I was like, and I just thought, like, I'll get into this afterwards.
Actually. Like, you're absolutely right. Kind of hiding behind this "I'm an asshole" persona, and you're like, but you actually are an asshole because you're going. Like, it's not you're not highlighting anything with a degree of irony or whatever. You're just actually participating.
Correct. The appeal of "I am an asshole" character that only works if you feel that the person has this principled foundation through that they're expressing. If you really think this is the person, then that all falls apart, unless, and this kind of gets into like this darker element of it, which I think he does have a large audience that is essentially kind of nihilistic. And so it's this kind of thing where they go, oh yeah, sure, well, he doesn't really stand for anything, and that's what we're into. That's what we're into now. I don't think that's the majority of his. I don't think you can really make a huge career out of that kind of nihilism. I don't think and also just I don't really want to be around those type of people at all. But I want to play him announcing, and this is from Breaking Points. They just took a little clip of him, and this is him announcing why that he did the gig and why he did it.
They're paying me $375,000 for one show. Now, a lot of other people are getting $1.6 million. That's not me. I'm not in that bracket. But they're giving me $375. Others are getting $150. Why are they doing it? Here's the point. Okay? I am doing this because they're paying me a large sum of money. They're paying me enough money to look the other way. Do you understand? Look the other way. That's a 4-word sentence that people don't do anymore. Look the other way. If something bad is happening to your left, look to your right. If, for example, I'm at a breakfast and I see someone get grabbed and they start hitting them with that, that big stick. I don't know if it's bamboo or whatever it is. It's kind of a wood, but it kind of snaps back. It's perfect for a cane. If I see someone getting it, I will look the other way.
See, what he's doing here is he's throwing in a bit of that device and being like, oh, this bit's a joke. Like, obviously this wouldn't happen. Like, I wouldn't expect to see somebody get hit with a stick and look away. So he's trying to be like, no, I'm still Tim Dillon. It's still a bit. But then other parts of it are absolutely not a bit.
Hey, okay? If I look the other way and I see someone being behanded, meaning they're chopping a hand off, that might be interesting to just kind of see actually how they do it. Because I think they do it kind of a sanitary way. But from what I've heard, if they're chopping a hand, I might look down. And if I'm looking at the floor and I see some eyeless beggar grabbing at me, trying to get my money, I will look up to the heavens. And if in the heavens I see a drone flying over, I will look the other way because I'm being paid enough money to look the other way. What don't you understand? What is so complicated?
And then he's being like, oh, you don't get it. Oh, it's why are you upset that I am doing this? And it's the reason why people would be upset is because I'll just kind of stop it now. His whole persona is based on this kind of, or a lot of it is this kind of truth to power. He has spoken extensively about, he thinks that the way that Israel is executing the war in Gaza has gone way too far. He speaks a huge amount about corporate America crushing middle America, and in particularly about sort of political elites in the United States. Yeah. And then the fact that he then does the Saudi Comedy Festival, comes on and says this in his defense, it just makes you go, well, next time I watch you and you're talking about that, I know that if BlackRock just say, here's $2 million to just stop talking about that, you will take it. So why would I continue to listen to you? Because that was your appeal, Tim. You were a truth to power comedian.
Next time you say, next time there's a Met Gala and he kind of roasts all the celebrities, you'll go, well, you wanted to go to Riyadh. So, you're not really in a position to judge this. And it's kind of this attempt to be like, as you say, this kind of deep nihilism where it's like the world's fucked, so I can both participate in its fuckedness by going to the Riyadh Comedy Festival, just as I can point out how other people are fucked. And it's like, well, that's actually, that's kind of that's a pretty bleak and not very enjoyable position for me as a fan to kind of invest in. But and then I heard him on another clip on someone's, because a lot of these people are this sort of comedy tier that they spend their entire week going on each other's podcasts basically, and so you hear them all interviewed in different forms. But this was one of those, and they had him on the phone actually on this podcast, and he was basically saying the same sort of thing, like saying, I wouldn't care if half of the other people who attended, half the other lineup of comedians was just executed in front of me, whatever, sort of being very overblown about it, again, as this slight decoy to the troubling question, which is like, yeah, that's funny, but like that aside, why are you doing this? And isn't it actually a bit fucked up? But so his was an interesting response.
The other thing, of course, is that because he was saying I got paid $375, and then he said, people are criticizing me because Saudi Arabia have slaves. I don't care that they have slaves. And then he said, he tried to turn it into a bit by saying, I think that the slaves would actually, if I was a slave and I had built something, I'd be proud of it. I'd tell the rest of the slaves, look, daddy built that, or something like this. And then the Riyadh Comedy Festival fired him for that. And I think he then thought, I'll come out and talk, maybe this will like save my bacon a bit because I'm not actually doing the festival. But no, of course, he would have done the festival if he hadn't have been fired. And he presumed he may have got some sort of down payment. They might have paid him half or something.
I think he got a deposit,
but he didn't get it all. So he basically like sold his credibility and then didn't even fucking get the full bag.
No, exactly. Got a small bag, and he was already getting plenty of bag, I assume,
of course,
as so many of these people are. And I mean, it kind of like, aside from the moral problem with it, it's just sort of puzzling to me that they don't, if they were just about self-preservation, why haven't they said, I mean, maybe it's just because it's a safety and numbers thing and they all kind of get together and say, well,
I think that's part of it.
All these other guys are going, but why haven't they gone, this is going to absolutely fuck my brand? And even if I'm making, hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars, I mean, if you're Bill Burr, you'd say, yeah, I'll make $1.5 million, but probably, my ticket sales for the next 5 years are going to go down because of it. And then that'll be the end of my career. So, the advantage is kind of eaten up with all the blowback, but it was almost as though, they'd already committed by the time this blowback, I guess, gained momentum. And there were a couple of people I saw who just kind of more minor figures who I didn't know, who had agreed to do it. And then after the blowback sort of said, oh yeah, fair enough, actually I won't do it. But I mean, that's arguably kind of, because now you just look like you've been caught with your hand in the cookie jar and you're like, all right, fine. It's almost better to just double down at that point. Yeah.
I mean, this sort of gets into quite a bit of a deeper topic, but it does worry me that I think we're in this era now where, in the kind of post-Trump era, I think a lot of people assume that there is virtually no reputational damage for your actions anymore in a way that there used to be. I feel like what probably these comedians' agents said to them, and this remains to be seen. So again, this is going to be a don't praise the machine, keep your eye on the ball kind of thing here, because it's going to be really interesting to see, for me in particular, and we'll get to him in a second, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to Bill Burr, because Bill Burr is a person who really positioned his brand as in like, I'm a person with high morals. I'm high character, high principles. He has this podcast. He's had it for years where it's just him. I think it's called like the Monday Morning Podcast. It's just him, and he just rails against. He famously was on this tip about billionaires. Yeah, exactly. And we'll get to him in a second, but I think the calculation with a lot of these people now is I'm big enough now that I have a huge audience, which is very varied. Some people care about issues, a lot of people maybe don't, is the calculation. And they think, I can do this. There'll be a little bit of blowback for a week, but hey, it's 2025. There's new news coming out every 2 seconds. People will forget. And most people are not people that care about politics. Maybe, the people that are online that are complaining about us doing this, they seem like a loud voice, but really it's not really a loud voice. And actually the vast majority of my fans don't fucking care. And so I'm going to get 1.6 million and it's really not going to dent anything. This remains to be seen. So we're going to talk about Bill Burr. But what we should also perhaps do before we get to Bill Burr is talk about the comedians who said no, and in particular, that was famously it's been reported, Gillis. And he said it himself, Shane Gillis, who is the hottest comedian in the world right now. He doesn't have the same decades of comedic experience and fame like someone like Dave Chappelle or even Bill Burr or Jim Owen, but he said no, and he has said that on a couple of podcasts. And I'm going to play a clip. I'm going to play a clip here, and we can listen to Shane Gillis on a podcast saying when he was offered the bag.
They were asking me to go to the Middle East soon.
What? What? Where? Why?
Saudi Arabia and UAE or Dubai.
Dubai?
I think I'm going to pass.
Yeah. Is it for the troops?
Not for the troops.
What?
It's for the Saudis.
For the Saudi princes?
Yeah, and everyone's like, yeah, you should do it. Everyone's doing it. It's like, for Saudis?
Yeah.
Weren't those the 9/11
guys? So good. So, I mean, his reputation has just skyrocketed because he's the one. Actually, there's a couple. We should also mention, I think there's a comedian called Atsuko, and I'll just bring this up on stage as well. Atsuko, I hadn't heard his person. Atsuko Okatsuka. They wrote, "The money is coming straight from the Crown Prince, who actively executes journalists. People with non-lethal drug offenses, bloggers, etc., without due process. A lot of you are saying you can't say. A lot of you you can't say anything anymore. Comedians are doing the festival. They all had to adhere to censorship rules to do it. And this is a person that they were offered. I must say, I don't know if Atsuko is a man or a woman. I think it's a she, Atsuko. A lot of the comedians were. So she leaked the contract that she got sent. Okay. Which said the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, including its leadership. I know who
this is. Yeah, okay. It is a woman. Yeah.
Okay. The Kingdom of content restrictions. Artists shall not prepare or perform any material that may be considered to degrade, defame, or bring into public dispute, contempt, scandal, or embarrassment or ridicule the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, including its leadership, public figures, culture, or people, the Saudi royal family, legal system, or government, and any religion, religious tradition, religious figure, or religious practice. So that's what the 1.6
that's the contract
for. Yeah,
and it's funny because, like, you know, one person we will no doubt talk about is Pete Davidson, who was just on Theo Von's podcast talking about it, and apparently sort of, well, it looks as though, like, when he's asked about, you know, do you think you'll be asked to censor yourself or whatever, and he kind of, you know, ums and ahs and says, I don't really know. I haven't really looked at it. Like, clearly he does know, and he is being asked to censor himself. And of course, what people find about that particularly galling is that his dad was a firefighter killed on 9/11.
Yes.
And now he is going back to the homeland of some of the people responsible for, in fact, all of the people responsible for, I think, for that event to make people laugh. And and that's a bit darkly ironic for some people, it seems. But yeah, he and others are just kind of fudging, or they're saying things like, oh, well, I don't give a shit about that, I'm just going to do my act, as though, you know, that will actually happen. Like, nobody can really say that you did or didn't. If you just kind of fly between the flags or whatever, swim between the flags, then you might just say, well, those were just the jokes that I thought were the funniest on the day, and sure, none of them criticized Islam, but that's just a coincidence.
It'd be particularly funny if, like, one of the comedians that they brought over, like, that comedian's most famous kind of angle was just ripping into sort of Salafist Islam. But
yeah, exactly.
They just didn't do it for that particular gig.
Airplane peanut jokes suddenly.
Now, what we must do is we must play this clip of Bill Burr from one of my favorite YouTube channels. This fellow has compiled these two clips. I think one's from 2011, Bill Burr talking on his podcast, and then one's from this week, him on his podcast.
Interesting.
And this is excellent. So this is just this is how Bill Burr spoke a few years ago, and then you'll hear that it cuts to him speaking about the festival this week after he had performed there.
Usher, Beyonce, and Mariah Carey actually did private New Year's gigs for $1 million. Did New Year's gigs for Gaddafi's kids. Can you fucking believe that? How much fucking money do you need to make? You know, you're gonna take a gig where you're gonna go dance like a goddamn fucking clown for a mass murderer's kids. Then you take that fucking blood money and what he's done. Yeah, you couldn't remember that he claimed he was behind the Pan Am bombings that killed fellow Americans. The fuck is wrong with you? The Royals loved the show. Everyone was happy.
Shit.
People doing the festival were thrilled. And it was just this great positive thing. And I got to tell you, just to be a part of that was amazing. And the comedians that I've been talking to just saying, like, dude, you can feel it. They wanted it. So it was a mind-blowing experience. Definitely top 3 experiences I've ever had.
All right. So after years of Bill Burr trashing celebrities for taking blood money and railing against billionaires and ranting about wealth inequality, he decided to go to Saudi Arabia and accept money from the royal family, who are known for using modern slave labor, which he's being paid not to mention and help cover up. You know, when he got back, he only talked about how amazing Saudi Arabia was. So he went from saying billionaires need to be put down like rabid dogs to taking money from a trillionaire family that's known for human rights violations and modern slavery and will kill citizens that speak out against them. So I don't think it gets more hypocritical than that.
One of the best YouTube channels that I subscribe to, which is Too Lazy to Try. And the guy who's behind it, he is great also. His profile picture is George Costanza, and then when he's talking, he just brings up pictures of George Costanza on screen. It's just stills of George Costanza. And I've enjoyed some of his commentary on the podcast and Comedy Sphere in the last few months. So this is the thing. I mean, it feels to me like Bill Burr's audience love him for that image that he had crafted. And if the comments are anything to go by, if you go to Bill Burr's, like, fucking the comments on his podcast on Spotify or the comments on the podcast as he's uploaded to YouTube, everybody's like very upset and disappointed with him.
I like his strategy, which is to kind of portray it as though he's like a, you know, rock musician who goes to East Berlin during the Cold War and performs and kind of gives people a little taste of American freedom and you know, unites them in their common humanity or whatever. Like, he's sort of treating it as, yes, it's a illiberal country, but they're people just like us. They love to laugh. I made them laugh. It was beautiful. And it's, you know, a step forward for humanity, which ignores the fact that it's not just a private gig that he's doing. Well, one of the facts is that it's not just a private gig that he's doing. It is being orchestrated by the Saudi government, and he's, you know, playing to an audience of kind of people who are very much towing the line on behalf of the Saudi regime. So, yeah, I don't think that really gets him out of the tough spot that he's found himself in.
Well, that leads me on to another point that I wanted to discuss with you, John, which is the argument for them doing it, which I've actually heard. So Louis C.K. went on Bill Maher last night, and Bill Maher put this argument forward. I mean, Louis C.K. obviously did the gig, and Louis C.K. actually kind of said, "Yeah, look, it is complicated. I am glad that people are talking about it because, he's like, look, I made the decision. I'm fine with it. Also, it's fun, like, just as a quick aside." Comedians that don't really do political comedy, I had less of an issue with them doing it, because I just was like, look, if you're not really politically informed and you don't talk about politics, and that, you know, that's kind of one thing. I still don't think it's great that you did it necessarily, and I don't think it's great that maybe you don't. It's maybe not great that you don't know. You might say, I don't really know what's going on. That's not great as well. But at least with, like, Louis C.K., as far as I know, he doesn't do like political, like, comedy really, and then you've got guys like Bobby Lee also who
no one
you just go
Bobby Lee to have a kind of handle on geopolitics, really.
No, but Bill Burr and Tim Dillon and even like Chappelle has been, you know, quite political as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these
Chappelle famously this week, I think Chappelle has made a statement saying that he felt freer to talk about issues in Saudi Arabia than he did in the US, and even Louis C.K. on Bill Maher just kind of went, well, that's not true. But Bill Maher and a few other people, I was watching another show that I quite like, The Hill, which is like a YouTube sort of political news show. Yeah, they're making this argument of, it's better to have a dialogue. If Saudi Arabia is going to modernize, it's going to be through things like this. It's not going to be making them an international pariah. Yeah. So more of this. What do you think of that, John? What if that is, you are having conversations with your agent and they were putting, and the agent's obviously going to get what, 10-20% of whatever you're getting paid.
Yeah,
so the
that's
agent is
right.
going to definitely be giving you that argument. What are you going to say? How do you strike the balance? And maybe we can even talk as you think about this.
Yeah.
Where is the line? Would you perform in China? Would you perform in a Uyghur re-education camp? Would you perform in North Korea?
North Korea, yeah. I'll perform. I'd love that. Perform in the demilitarized zone.
Yeah. So what do you think of that? How do you say? Do we say that that's steel manning? I never know if it's steel manning or straw manning, or if it's water manning or air manning.
Yeah.
I'm not what's
manning. I think
heart manning. Yeah.
I'm just going by the
fire manning.
Planeteer elements. So yeah, this is an interesting question, and I saw something that, I mean, one of the things that even the comedians who are, just to go back to your earlier point, even those who are not necessarily doing political comedy, they still are, some of them, you know, people like Andrew Schultz or Mark Normand are the kind of people who love to talk about, you know, basically being kind of, I guess, sort of outspoken, saying whatever they want. They hate censorship. They love freedom of speech. You know, that's their kind of vibe, is like everyone should just chill the fuck out and I should be free to say whatever I want. And, you know, all this kind of high-minded, sanctimonious kind of wokery that is everyone getting their knickers in a knot because I made a joke about this or that is just bullshit. And, you know, there's a certain, as David Cross, another comedian who I don't think was asked, but certainly didn't go to the comedy festival, pointed out during the week. There's a kind of, you know, hypocrisy in saying, well, I hate, you know, the fact that we have to, that people are bending the knee at football games or whatever, or that like you can't say this or you can't say that. But, you know, then you go to perform at this country that just has the most repressive, you know, conservative kind of culture of, I mean, it's not cancel culture, it's basically political persecution. And I'm
just imagining somebody on their knees about to be beheaded, looking up to the execution and going, oh, bloody cancel culture.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm about to get cancelled right here.
You've been cancelled and kidnapped by Saudi agents in a foreign country. It's the worst form of cancelling. And so he was like, you know, he said, you have a funny bit about how you don't like Yankee candles or airport lounges, but you're cool with murder and or the public caning of women who were raped, and by having the audacity to be raped, we're guilty of engaging in adultery. Got any bits about that? And then he said, you know, clearly you guys don't give a shit about what the rest of us think, but how can any of us take you seriously again? And
yeah,
as you said, kind of, you know, he says elsewhere, we can never again take seriously anything these comedians complain about, etc. So that's the, you know, even those who are not necessarily overtly political, I think still face a bit of a potential blowback on their brand, which is kind of very free speechy, and a little bit kind of, you know, pro-America, or sort of liberal democracy in that kind of slightly right-leaning way. And then they go and perform in a country which just, you know, has completely antithetical values. And I guess it's different from performing privately. You know, you might say, well, I'm doing a tour of the UAE and people want to come, they can come. I don't really care. But you're doing it at the behest of the Saudi government in a kind of whitewashing exercise, which is a different thing, I think.
And have a look. Sorry, go on.
Because you're agreeing to be personally complicit in and to kind of add your voice to whitewashing campaign.
Well, and look at how it's worked with Bill Burr.
Yeah,
like that's such a direct example of the success of why they paid him $1.6 million, because he went from you're scum if you perform for murderous tyrants, and then he's gone, oh man, you know who I love, who I just think is the fucking best in the world. And what do you say? So what do you say, John, to the argument that the only way that they will ever modernize is through these types of cultural exchanges? You have to expose people to this type of thing. It's never going to work. It's never going to work by saying, tut tut, we're never going to engage with you because of how terrible you are. So what do you say?
I say that's about the best argument you could possibly make, but I still don't really buy it because I sort of think, well, are they, I mean, what's the logic there? You go and perform at this comedy festival and these kind of sheiks and other oligarchs in attendance, they say to themselves, those American comedians are really funny. Maybe we should be a bit more American aligned in our political approach, and maybe we should stop.
We should form an alliance.
Exactly. Maybe we should align ourselves with the West. Maybe we should stop kind of being sort of a theocratic nut jobs and renditioning people from foreign countries so that we can send them back to be tortured in Saudi Arabia. I don't think they're really interested in doing any of that. They're interested in surviving as Saudi Arabia in its current form. And they know that in order to do that, they've got to kind of, attract some international cultural and artistic legitimacy, I guess, or at least that's the strategy that they've gone with. So, yeah, I mean, would it be better? I would have thought it would be better for the American comedians to say en masse, we're not doing that because you're a bunch of dicks. And then they might think this strategy isn't going to work unless we're slightly less sticky. Maybe we should only execute a couple of hundred people a year instead of like 350 or whatever it is. But
I think it's 214. So I think you're right. Like I think that's as of right now. I think for 2025, I think you were right in the one a day kind of thing.
345, something like that. So. Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't that work? Or why wouldn't they? Why not just make that policy a total failure, or their strategy a total failure, because they're just unpalatable? Then they might think maybe we should be slightly more palatable. I think what this is doing is basically going along with their current strategy, which is not a kind of rapprochement or liberalization. It's just a strategy to make money as a country so they can keep doing what they're doing, I think. But yeah, I mean, I understand that logic, and I also do think that a lot of people are faced with that decision. Do you want to go and make $1.5 million? I mean, the logic that would be more persuasive to me is like, well, if I don't, is it really going to help the situation if I don't do this? Like, can I just say to myself, well, my participation is kind of neither here nor there, so I may as well go along, make my money, and then I can come back to America and tell everyone that I think Saudi Arabia is a shithole and that we should stop, whatever. Like you tell yourself something like that. But it's obvious that a lot of them don't really feel, much compulsion to justify themselves at all, either because they just haven't really thought it through, or because they're so motivated by getting that bag that they just don't really care. And they could care. They don't feel, but certainly don't feel personally guilty about it. And they don't feel particularly publicly shamed by the blowback. And I would definitely put Jim Owen in that category.
And you were just saying before the show that it looks like Australian comedian Jim Jefferies, who was on the lineup, is no longer on the lineup.
Yeah, so he was an interesting one because he said he tried a slightly different strategy from Bill Burr. It was kind of similar to Chappelle, actually. He was saying, all governments are bad, and like, you think our government hasn't done bad things? Well, you're naive, yes, the Saudis do bad things, but look what America's done here and there. And I mean, that again is kind of pretty intellectually lazy. Like, you could say, well, yeah, sure, America's done bad things. Of course they have. But are you going to do you're not doing gigs in America at the behest of the American government, but also they have done bad things, but they aren't just kind of, executing people for having affairs. I mean, there's a degree, there's an important degree of difference there. And which of those countries would you say is a better example of a functioning, modern liberal nation state, Saudi Arabia or the United States? I mean, you could say they both have serious problems, but there is definitely a difference there that Jim was ignoring. And then he kind of said, he kind of played this angle of, he said something like comedians are free speech machines, and, we're going to kind of, implying that they were going to kind of shift the dial in the right direction by doing this festival, which again is just dumb. I mean, you're not defying the government. You're doing it because they've invited you. But in the course of that, of making that argument, he was on Theo Von's podcast and he said, they've killed a journalist. Sure, that's not great, but I'm not going to die in a ditch over it, or I'm not going to die on that fucking hill or whatever. So he wasn't even being critical in particular, but he was acknowledging the fact that they killed Khashoggi.
Yeah, without using his name.
Yeah, without using his name. But it seems like that was enough for his name to disappear from the lineup.
Much like Jamal disappeared from the Saudi embassy in Istanbul.
Yeah, they'll probably get someone who looks like Jim Jefferies to perform.
Paint a little beard on him.
And either that or they just saw his act and thought no amount of whitewashing is worth sitting through this bullshit.
I thought a good comparison, John, a little thought exercise, which I haven't heard anybody mention, but came to me in my bed the other night, and I quickly scribbled it down because I thought this is good, and I don't think anybody has said this. How would we feel if Bill Hicks and George Carlin were alive today, and the Riyadh Comedy Festival headliners were Bill Hicks and George Carlin? How would we feel about that?
Yeah, it's pretty grim, isn't it? It's just, to say you're a free speech machine, okay, great, but you're going to a country which abhors free speech and you're taking money to go there. Like it's true though. I mean, I think part of what's going on here is, and it reminded me of this thing Norm Macdonald said when he was still with us about the way that comedians are kind of viewed with political seriousness now in a way that they weren't back in the day. And he was using these examples of these kind of dumb sort of 1940s like pantomime comedians and saying like nobody was asking like Red Skelton what he thought of the Vietnam War or whatever. And like, nobody, it wouldn't have occurred to anyone that he have a sensible view on anything. And now we kind of view these people as sometimes, like you got people like Seinfeld obviously weighing in on what's going on in Palestine and making serious points that are taken seriously by the media. So it's a kind of strange shift. And part of this is making me think, is this just another example of where we are being punished for putting too much faith in celebrities and forgetting that they're just kind of often pretty shit people, even though they present, particularly comedians, because it's so important that you kind of like them and relate to them as people in order to find them funny. But, they present this persona and we've all kind of fallen for it. But that's part of their business model, is to be that kind of person. And maybe it's just not who they are in real life. Or maybe it's kind of who they are, but then they're also just ruthless careerists, and, they'll do things for money if they're asked to do them. Looking again at this lineup, not Chris Tucker. I mean, he's a paragon of integrity. If we can't trust Chris Tucker,
I think that's a perfect note to wind up on, John. And as we say, we will check back in on this because I really want to see what happens to Bill Burr in particular. I just want to see what the fallout is from all of this, or if we continue into a world where there is just no reputational damage for anyone doing anything anymore. Everybody just has a goldfish memory, and everybody just goes, "Oh, look, I just want to drool watching a bit of Bill Burr on Netflix, and I don't want to have to think about anything."
The world's too confusing. I just don't care anymore.
I don't care anymore. I just want to watch Bill Burr talking.
Just want to hear Jimmy Carr ranting about waiters giving him shit service or whatever he does.
And as the episode draws to an end, I have a small ask of our audience, John. If you are enjoying the podcast, Don't Praise the Machine, please share this podcast with a friend right now, whatever application you're using. It would make a big difference. We're trying to reach out to some new fans, some new audience. So if you're enjoying the show, if you like what me and John are doing up here, it would mean a lot to us if you could pause the episode right now, hit that little share button, share it with a friend or a member of your family who you think might enjoy the show, and we'll see if we can continue to grow this community.
Yeah. If you're texting someone who you're romantically interested in, or if you're looking for an excuse to reach out to them, maybe you want to invite them to dinner, but you need a pretext. You can say, "Hey, thought of you. I was listening to this great podcast. You might like it. Do you want to come over to my house and listen to it? I'll cook your dinner and we'll just see where the night takes us."
Exactly. We're going to do the classic. I'll give you a pause here. You can just pause the do the share right now. This is where you can press pause. And you're back. And now you're back from the app. And you've shared with a friend, and we want to say we appreciate you.
Thank you very much for sharing. And I know
Thanks so much for sharing.
I know that you wouldn't be listening to this bit of the episode unless you had shared.
True.
So,
Speaking, this whole show has been about moral character and principles. And so we know you're not the type of person who'd be listening right now if you hadn't just shared. So we want to say thank you to everybody that's listening right now because you've all shared. Thank you so much, everybody. And we can't wait to see you next week
at the podcast.